Hello Biblionauts, I am Grix, among other things, and this is my parade of ignorance. Today, two more books of essentials, The Art of War and The Prince, by Sun Tzu and Nicolas Machiavello. In the edition I read it back then. I talk about this one first since it's the first one I read. Also one of the very first philosophy books I read. This book, this edition, is not complete. I need to get myself a hold on a new Prince and reread it, since the last time I read it was approximately 4 years ago. I was working on scuba diving in the Mediterranean, and I was reading it on the boat on the way to the dive spot, and some of the pages on the beginning of the book fell off and fell into the water, and I did pick them up, but they were unreadable, so I was never able to reread this book, and not for lack of trying though. I wanted to. I enjoyed this. I found it incredibly interesting. This is the author speaking to a young king, teaching him the arts of statesmanship and anything that has to do with control, acquisition of power, and keeping that power. I don't remember a lot about this book, but I remember both my fascination with the book, how this was in many ways a gateway drug for me into philosophy. Not the number one, there were 3 other books before this, but this was the first one that to me felt like a difficult book. Difficult in the sense of like me not having read something like this ever before, feeling truly estranged. Before I read Sisyphus Myth, which is another book, self-essential, that will come up at some point. I have also read some of Plato's dialogues, and I think in terms of actual philosophy, those were the 2 first books I read. Like philosophy's dialogues came in different separate books, but they're sort of like I'm referring to the complete dialogues from Plato. And both of those books are, they are very welcoming. Camus, because he's a great writer and the book was very, very short, and Plato, because Plato is just dialogues. It doesn't get much easier than that when it comes to philosophy. Hello, Lazaro. This is my cat. It's a very beautiful cat. Has one blue eye and one green eye, and it's very, very friendly. When he was born, he couldn't walk, and my mom chose to call him Lazarus from the Bible. If you're familiar with Lazarus, I don't know if that is the actual name that you in the English translation of the Bible would have, but Lazarus couldn't walk until he was touched by Jesus. And my mother, being a prophet of her own mysticism, chose to call him Lazarus, and kept saying, Lazarus, rise and walk. And after a few months, Lazarus eventually started walking, probably because his bones or his legs developed enough muscle. But it was very interesting to see him drag himself around the house before as a very, very small cat, not being able to use anything more than his front legs, and now he's a very big, very strong cat. I've seen him jump from like a 2-second, like this building had 2 floors, and I've seen him jump from this window all the way down, just for his own, I don't know why, really. No, there was no reason for him to jump, but I think it's just he's become very athletic, a very athletic cat. Yeah, although extremely one of the most sensible and coward cats I've ever met in my life. So enough digressions. The Prince, Nicolas Machiavello. Yes, if you can read it on any Romance language, Romance tongue, I think you call them Romance. I normally call it just Latin languages. I think would be better, but any will do, because when it comes to philosophy, the form is not as important as the content. And the content of this book is very, very, very interesting, and it's incredibly influential for people in power of any society afterwards. I'd say anyone who got a hold on this. I had an edition once that was even annotated by Napoleon, So yeah, I mean, I will make it a point to reread this, especially if Steve and I end up doing the 10 months philosophy reading 10 books. This will be one of them, because he already mentioned that he wanted to read this one, and I will be so happy to read it. It still remains a book self-essential after so many years. I have very, very good memories of reading this, both in terms of the book itself and also just personal memories, because of the time and in moment, in space and time that I was, that I couldn't pick it up. That's also the reason why I could not pick it up. I could not pick it up, and that's also the reason why I still keep this edition, although it's incomplete since the pages fell apart. It's just a nice memory. So that will be one, and the other one is The Art of War, which is also one of the very first philosophy books I've read. I wasn't particularly interested in war, nor in strategy when I read this book, but I had come from a very long trip, very, very scary adventure expedition with a few friends, and the dynamics and the advices that Sun Tzu talks about here in The Art of War reminded me of, not only reminded me of, but felt directly applicable to my experiences traveling and doing what I was doing, just confronting scary situations with people, and also the power relations in the group. If you ever do an expedition with me and you are not Captain Tillman or someone who's been doing it for a lot longer than me, generally you are gonna have to follow me, because when it comes to expeditions, when it comes to risking your life, very rarely, especially in expeditions that are multi-discipline, where you are planning to kayak a certain length, and then you're planning to climb, and then you're planning to, who knows, sail, and then you're planning to hike, and when it comes to something like that, very rarely am I doing that with anyone who has anywhere near the amount of experience that I have. And if you happen to be doing that with a bunch of young 20-year-olds that are, you know, my age, but not my age in an experiential sense, then you're gonna have to deal with a lot of psychological battles on whether or not the leadership that you claim is going to or going not to be taken from you. That I don't sound like a very nice person to hike with, but I'm not talking about hiking here. I'm talking about very dangerous things that we were doing together and that we continue to do together over and over and over. And when I am risking my life, I want it to be only when absolutely necessary and for the right reasons, not for my own ignorance. So I'm not going to follow anyone else's directions if they are based on guesses or ignorance that I could remedy. So because of that, this book also felt applicable to me in a way in which most philosophy does not. And that's why I'm bringing the experiential factor here, is because these books, these two books that came now, they might be philosophy, but they are in no way strange or foreign to human experience. There is definitely a Dubro way in which you could say that the art of war can help you in life, and you know, in the sense of like you betray your friends and get to the top of the ladder, or the top of the social ladder, and that would be you know, that would be something that a certain kind of archetype of our society nowadays would say. But I don't mean it in that way. I just mean it that when I read this book, I found it more interesting than just because of its historical context as a warlord. And because of that, it will remain a book self-essential, because I can imagine myself reading it in the future and once again finding new revelations about a lot more than the nature of war, but the nature of humans. The Art of War by Sun Tzu, another book self-essential.